We're going to be taking the internal components out of this Alienware R8 and we're going to move them into the NZXT H510 Elite case, creating an Alienware NZXT hybrid computer. This video is going to be a little longer than normal because it's spanning a 2-week time period of switching from my Alienware to an NZXT computer. I'll put timestamps in the show notes, so if you want to skip through any boring parts or just want to look at a certain thing that I did during this process, just look down in the show notes and you can go to a certain spot. I'll also list all the hardware that I purchased for this build and put that down in there as well. Back in December 2018 is when I purchased my Alienware R8. I've been playing Fortnite with my sons, who introduced me to the game a few months earlier, but I'd always been playing on my PS4, which compared to computers is a lot different experience. So didn't really know much about gaming computers. I had heard about Alienware in the past, so I didn't really research a lot and bought an Alienware. Since then, you know, I've watched a lot of videos and content creators and so forth, and see that there's a lot of other stuff out there. NZXT recently came out with their Creators edition of computer, and I really liked the look of that, and I didn't want to buy a whole new computer for $3,500, so I figured I could take the internals from my Alienware and throw them in the NZXT case. It wasn't that simple. Just watch the video and find out why, and hopefully anyone thinking of something similar, you can just watch this video and save yourself some time and money and see what I ended up doing in the end. So enjoy. So as you can see, when you open up the Alienware, it's pretty crowded in there. We've got our power that swings out. If I can get it here with one hand. There we go. So when you swing out that power, then you can see behind there, got liquid cooled. We're going to have to move that. Hopefully that fits in the new case. And then our RAM, it's not RGB RAM. And then we've got our Geforce RTX card. And our AverMedia will be moving over. So I don't know how airflow was in this thing with the everything in there. We want it to look nice in here. So we got the bigger hard drive that we're going to be putting in. It's a 2 terabyte, 7200 RPM. And then for the RAM sticks, instead of buying RGB RAM, we just got some RGB covers that we're going to be putting on the RAM sticks. So let's get started. So we got everything out of the Alienware that I needed. The motherboard, power supply, liquid cool for the processor. Now, some interesting note, if anyone's thinking of doing this, this back panel, this part of the metal back panel, that's either, I think it's just a sticker that's over there, the back panel. So when I transferred to the NZXT case, you can see I've got no panel here. So that's a problem, for aesthetics anyway. I disconnected the Wi-Fi antenna. I never used it anyway. I always plug in my desktop. So the thing with the power supply, all the cables are too short. I had to order cable extensions so I can even connect power to the thing. So I can't even power it on yet to see how we're doing. As you can see on the Alienware build, with the power supply essentially at the top or right next to the motherboard here. I mean, they didn't have any reason to have any normal size cables, I guess. They're all short. So the extensions should be here tomorrow. So I should be able to hook everything up and power it up and see if it either starts smoking or if it's actually going to work. I did try this power supply that I had put in my Optiplex build, which I thought was an 850 because it was in an 850 box, but my son told me last night, he's like, oh, that's only a 500 watt. I just put it in the box of the 850 that I had bought. So I was still going to try a 500 just to see. However, I didn't have decent connections to hook up for my RTX card, the 8-pin and the 6-pin. I mean, I did have an 8 and a 4, and I think we had a dual 6. I could have maybe Frankenstein something, but I didn't want to take a chance, so I just went ahead and ordered the extension cables for the stock Dell power supply, which is 750 watt. So as you can see, I think the liquid cooler looks pretty cool. I wish that Alienware had some RGB in it or something, but it's just either a sticker or it's painted on there. But it should look good with the RGB lighting. If you noticed, I do have the Alienware power button that I mounted in here. That's because the power button and stuff that's up here, well, to connect it, I mean, it even has an adapter, but even the adapter doesn't work. Alienware's got a proprietary connection here for the lighting, so I couldn't connect it if I wanted to. So I am without my 2 USBs and the audio cable and even the power button on the top for right now. I think what I'm gonna have to do is purchase a new motherboard so I can set it up the right way and utilize that stuff. For those of you out there thinking of taking a proprietary thing such as a Dell motherboard or something and putting it in a nice case, be forewarned. I took the hit for you and found out that so a lot of the connections on the motherboard aren't the same as a normal motherboard. So, but the Alienware logo looks cool. So what I'll probably end up doing, I'll just utilize this for now. I'll have to actually, if I want to turn it on or off, I'll have to pop open the glass and push the power button that I've mounted in here. Now the cool thing, hopefully if it works, is once I power it up, this Alienware logo will be lit up with RGB, so that might look kind of cool inside the case until I can save up and get a new motherboard. I'll probably get a motherboard through NZXT since this is an NZXT case and transfer everything over, including I can keep the Alienware logo for the cooler there. and that should work, and I'll transfer over my my CPU. So that should work for that. So right now, just waiting on the extension cables so I can connect the motherboard power and get the GPU set up. GPU does extend and plug in there, but it's, you know, it's these mustard looking cables. I got a kit that's all black cables, so it should look a little bit nicer in there. And I'll keep you updated, and hopefully tomorrow we can flip the power switch and hopefully it doesn't start smoking. So I'll be back tomorrow. The cable extensions arrived for the power supply unit, so got everything connected in the computer and getting ready to power it up and see how it's going to run for the first time. Alright, so here we go. Let's see if it powers on. Nothing. That clicking noise you heard when I hit the button on the back of the power supply unit, that was a fail-safe for a fuse tripping. I never did find out what was causing it. Could have been a short or some bad connection or something. I did disconnect all the extensions, moved the power supply up inside the case, and then hooked everything up directly, and I was able to power it up and it did function. However, I was not going to use the computer in that way. And it was at this time that I decided I'm going to go ahead and get some more parts and upgrade this thing and just swap out the motherboard altogether. I also made the decision at this point that I was going to go ahead with the new motherboard. I was going to buy a new processor, because if I had taken the processor out of the Alienware, I was essentially just bricking that thing, and it would be pretty much useless unless you buy a processor and a cooler and, you know, build that from scratch if someone else wanted to use it, which my youngest did show some interest in wanting to use my Alienware. So for him to be able to use my Alienware, he was going to upgrade from a computer he had that was about 3 years old. So I decided to keep the i7 9th gen processor and the Alienware with that motherboard and the cooler. I ended up ordering an i9 processor. I wanted to get it as close to the creator's build as I could for NZXT. So I've got the i9 9th gen. I got 32 gigs of RAM instead of 64. And then I have the RTX 2080, but not the 2080 Ti like the creator's build. So it's almost there. It's pretty powerful. Does what it needs to do. I took my M.2 drive, I took my SSDs I had, and took those out of the Alienware. And then I also bought a 2 gig SSD to put in here, or not SSD, spinning drive to put in here, which basically I ended up with about 4 terabytes, 2 terabytes SSD, 2 terabytes spinning drive. So not quite the same as the creator's build. I actually have more SSD than the creator build that NZXT has, but also purchased another light kit to put some more lights in there. And I got the Kraken X62 for the cooling. So that's where we're at now. I pretty much, the only thing Alienware that was in the Alienware that came over here was the hard drives, the GPU, and the RAM. So Not quite sure if you could classify it as an Alienware NZXT hybrid anymore once all is said and done. I basically just took some of the parts over. I don't have that cool Alienware cooler with the logo on it, and definitely not the motherboard because that just wasn't working. For the motherboard type, I did end up getting the NZXT Z390 is the one that works with the i9. Anyone interested in grabbing a case and wanting to bring over your computer, I'm sure a standard motherboard would work just fine if you've got a build with a motherboard that's not proprietary like Dell. They've got some special connections in there which makes it hard to throw it in another computer. So this project ended up costing me a lot more than just buying a new case. Pretty much I have my own NZXT Creator build when all is said and done, and my son has a Alienware. He just took his hard drive, RAM, and video card out of his computer and threw it in the Alienware, so now it's essentially his new Alienware as well. And that's how the project ended up.